There we go. So, any idea what my topic is today? Longevity. It is longevity, and there's a reason I'm wearing blue. All right. Well, some of us are here. There we go. So this is actually one of the questions your homework asks. I think it's like the 5th or 6th down, and so you want to wait until the end, and it just says to answer it sincerely what your thoughts are. Kind of like when I talked about is a calorie a calorie. You probably would have answered it very different before that lecture than after, and you may even answer it different now after the end of the term. But is aging a disease? And this fascinated me. I redid all my slides because last weekend somehow I got like 3 articles that suddenly showed up, and they all have to do with this week's topic. And so actually, especially today, and so it was actually not. It was only 4.5 years ago, 5 years ago, the World Health Organization released their classification of disease. They do it, I guess, every year, every couple of years, and it was the first time ever that aging was listed as a disease. And that makes it very interesting. And so this is a quote from the article that I was reading. It paves the way for new research into novel therapeutics. And I thought that was interesting because it's all about what drug can we make for the next, what supplement and stuff like that, instead of saying, so basically they're saying to delay or reverse age-related illnesses, cancer, cardiovascular, metabolic, neurodegenerative. And this was a research intense focus now on these nutrient sensing systems. I talked about them a little bit today and on Wednesday, but these are some of these crazy slides, and this gets a little sciencey, but I didn't even know what this was, but you will start seeing this in places. And so mTOR is mammalian target of rapamycin, which apparently regulates cell growth and protein synthesis. And you get these crazy pathways of what they do. AMPK, there's certain keywords that people want to key in on, but you guys know some of these. It's like, it decreases ROS. Question shows up again. I think it's the 3rd time ROS has showed up as a homework question. And so, and a couple of people actually, I know Delaney talked about it in her presentation, but reactive oxygen species, so we're getting fewer free radicals. So that's the mTOR that we're, all these steps, we're increasing the AMPK. Maybe that's the next one is the AMPK. I think this is the mTOR, which is a protein kinase that helps when you have low energy. It has to do with making ATP, is what AMPK has. And the last one is the SIRT, which I don't know how to spell aging. I have to admit that because half the places put an E in it and half the places don't. And I think it's weird with the E in there, but I've seen it now in so many places it must be a thing. But I'm going to talk about these actually a little bit later. Actually, I think I talked about several of these. But I say SIRTs. I don't know. I can't remember how to say it, but it's a group of 7 proteins that have been highly researched and critical to DNA expression, and we're going to see them in aging, and they have to do with this NAD. And so Jenna actually mentioned NAD. I don't know if she remembers she did because you didn't know what it was. I'm going to talk about more, but some of you took Chem 106. NAD should be ringing a bell because you had a lot of questions on it. It's part of metabolism. It's a coenzyme, I actually wrote it here. That's part of ATP synthesis. And ATP is our energy molecule in our cell. And so basically, these two especially have to do a lot with making more ATP so you have more energy. Because that's one of the things we think about when we think about people getting older is they don't have as much energy as a little kid who's running all over the place. But yeah, this is a lot of research. And again, even though some of these slides, when you first look at them, or if you go on things, you're like, oh, that's too sciencey, find the pieces you know. Like, hey, here's a DNA molecule. Oxidative stress. Hopefully, have the idea, even though we're not in a chemistry class, that oxidative stress means free radicals. And all of these you can get in a supplement form. And so this came actually from an article And I put the quote down here because the name was the science behind NMN. And I think I have it on a later slide or I cut out, was this guy, Christopher Shade, who wrote it. He actually has a supplement business. And his supplement business was actually interesting. I'll see if it's on the next slide. Oh, it's down there, and so we can't see it. His supplement business actually does something novel with mercury as the delivery system. And I'm like reading it going, why would you use mercury? That's known to be a neurotoxin. But anyway, it was that a lot of stuff in the articles I was reading it, I was like, this feels like a lot of these articles are advertisements, like they're pushing supplements and stuff. And a lot of you made comments that, because I'm not very pro supplement, because everybody seems to be pushing them these days, but you can find all of these in a supplement form. And what I'm hoping to show you is why not figure out a way that we can just keep them high and natural in ours, and we can get this. This was this guy's stuff. It's called Quicksilver because it actually is mercury somehow in it. I'm not sure. And they give them wonderful names, and they put this in formulated. So I think it has something to do with making mercury into nano. And then I have this article, which I thought was appropriate because a lot of you are like, yeah, aging, that's my grandma, grandpa, or greats and stuff. And I've mentioned this. And so there was actually an article that showed up in my folder. About heart attacks are on the rise in 20 and 30-year-olds. And so this is the thing that was interesting is the heart attacks are actually decreasing across the US. We're actually at some of our lowest numbers in a couple decades, but article said don't celebrate yet because it's actually increasing by 2% a year amongst people under 40 years old. And so you can say, well, we have really low heart attack rates as it is. The good news is, this was the thing that cracked me up. This is a straight quote from the article. Is the good news was we now have 2 classes of diabetes medication. So I'm like, can we even write an article anymore that isn't promoting drugs? Like the article itself is promoting. This was actually straight from the American College of Cardiology. And so I don't know if you remember the first week, one of those talks. I had talked about how they're all boxed by different things, including things like Kentucky Fried Chicken and Taco Bell give huge amounts of money to these places, and as well as the pharmaceuticals. So rather than saying, what is the issue? Why are there so many? We're like, oh, we'll just keep medicating all these kids instead of saying, like I'm going to say, and you've heard me say it for 9 weeks, stop eating all the crap and start eating real food. 1 in 5 heart attack patients are now under 40 years old. That's huge. That's 20%. And it's really sad to me because there's probably somebody here who knows someone. And again, it's increased. And these numbers are still increasing by about 2% a year. And the biggest is women, a young woman especially. Naturally, women usually have almost no heart attacks until after menopause, and that's because we have lower iron levels. It's that iron is a huge oxidizing agent in our body, and so our iron levels are naturally lower because of our menstrual cycle. And actually, the whole issue is more once you have 1 heart attack, the second heart attack. The good news is I keep saying our bodies heal, and there's actually been studies going on for 30, 40 years showing that you can completely heal the heart with diet and exercise and relaxation, that you have to take a deep breath and change. So I was having a conversation before, and a lot of people are stuck in their ways. And if you're going to be stuck in your ways and not ready to say, yeah, you know, I don't want to be a statistic. I want to be the change and the inspiration. Key risk factors, again, for adults and for 20 and 30 years old is this huge increase in diabetes and also hypertension. And it's actually not that new. I mentioned before the Korean War, when they did autopsies on the Korean and the American soldiers, these 19-year-old men, all were starting to develop cardiac issues. Their arteries were already blocked, and this was in the 50s. So I can't imagine now if they did something, whereas the Korean soldiers did not show that. And the other issue is obesity, right? The increase in that. Smoking and vaping. So they are really good at making sure vaping doesn't get the sticker that smoking cigarettes did, because big tobacco has still lots of money. The amount of substance abuse we're here in Oregon, so and alcoholism. And dare I say this, which is social media, and which basically equals stress. I have never until like the past 5 to 10 years had students who are like, I'm so stressed, I'm so stressed, I'm so busy. And I'm like, what's the change that's happened? And I don't have social media, I never have. And so I don't understand this very well. If you watch me trying to type a message in the phone, I'm like the one finger thing. And the sad part is because it starts like this. And a lot of you on that mindful eating week admitted when you were supposed to try to eat without your laptop, your phone, and all that stuff, that it was really hard. You were one of these kids who mom put the computer in front of you while you were eating so she could get things done. And so don't do that. Break the habit. So where we're going with this, inspirational, this is one of my favorite talks, is something called the Blue Zones. Has anybody in here ever heard of the Blue Zones? Yeah, I was gonna assume you had more. So this was a guy from National Geographic, or he got a grant from National Geographic, and I have pictures of him later. And he wanted to go and study areas on the planet where people were living longer, that you had more centurions. So a centurion is somebody who lives to be 100, but not just that these people were living to be 100, but they were thriving. They were still working. They were still very involved. They're not like a lot of people I know say, oh, I want to die when I'm 80 because I don't want to be like this and that. And it's more that we're looking at this all from a different standpoint. So he ended up going around and he ended up picking Kenya on 5 places. And he wrote a book, and it's actually become his whole thing because he's had several books out. And this was specifically looking at longevity hotspots. There is one in the US, that's the last one I'll talk about, which is Loma Linda, California. And so what the Blue Zones are, again, it's places on the planet where people are living, thriving to be 90s and 100s. Okinawa, Japan, that's probably not a surprise. I'm going to walk through each of these because the first question asks, what are the Blue Zones? And then the next question just says, write something about each of the 5 that I discussed, just something that strikes you. The thing that strikes me, Costa Rica, I got to go to Costa Rica. This is why Joey went to Summit for high school, because when I looked at their webpage, they were going to Costa Rica next summer. I'm like, oh, you're going to go there for high school because I'm going to Costa Rica with you. It was beautiful. But the other thing that amazes me is 2 of them. I don't know why he picked 2 in the Mediterranean, but he did. It's just really interesting. And I think that's my first picture. Oh, so this was a quote on the article from Aging from the World Health Organization that aging is considered a cascade of robustness breakdown triggered by decreased, oh, here we go, NAD. This was made from vitamin D3. We'll get to it more. By a decrease in systematic NAD biosynthesis and resultant functional defects in susceptible organs and tissues. That's somebody who's writing like really big words, but basically they're saying everything has to do with the NAD. This is why I like the Blue Zones, because he just went and said, let's look anthropologically. Let's go and find the places where these people, and they're not supplementing, they're not like taking NMN. Or saying, oh, look, we have an epigenetic shift. So epigenetics is beyond genetics, talking about DNA, or your genome, again, DNA, or alteration in your nutrient sensitivity, telomeres. I'll talk about telomeres, mitochondria. We'll talk about that on Wednesday. Yeah. So these are like big wordy stuff that doctors will often throw out at us. And let's look at the Blue Zones. Now, first of all, if you woke up every morning and that was your view, like, heck, I'm going to live to be 100. This is just like right off. It's like gorgeous. And yeah, so obviously it's right on the Mediterranean, and the Mediterranean is always perfect temperature. I think it's always in the 70s. And it's just these gorgeous pictures. And these are pictures, I think, from his book. And this is what they eat, since this is a nutrition class, and that was actually one of the things he found. And it's not that they were all strict vegetarians. You can see these guys, they ate, but when they ate animal products, it is just a small amount. They're not gonna eat their animals because they need their animals for the dairy, and the dairy they're getting is not from the supermarket. And so most of us could probably tolerate their dairy. I'd be terrible with dairy. It makes me stay up all night, not because I have diarrhea or something, but I don't sleep. And so everybody has different symptoms. I had a potluck with my church this weekend, and I sadly tried somebody's food, and Joey Layer's like, you know, there was cheese in there, and I'm like, yeah. I took a few bites. I didn't want to like, because everybody's looking at you, you know, if you like it and stuff. But this is all their own dairy, and I'm sure it's all goat or sheep. Yeah, and vegetables, but this is the part that probably blows you all away. Almost half their diet is not vegetables, it's actually grains. And grains are the thing that have been just slammed, like carbs are bad. And several of you have said that, oh, it's bad because it's high in carbs. Carbs got a bad name because of the word grains. And most people won't eat grains. They won't eat the bun. They'll eat the whole 2 whole beef patties and special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickle, onion, but they leave off the sesame seed bun, but it's whole grains. Really, this diet is whole foods and it's plant-based, which means they do have some other stuff. The amount of added sugar, that's just going to be like in their tea, probably. What are you going to ask me? Okay, is there fruit still? Where is their fruit? Like 1%. It probably has to do with their eating complete. They don't go to the store. They're eating off their own land. And I don't know why. I don't know what would grow here. So I would assume lemon trees. I don't know. I have never been there, even though that's where my heritage is from. I'm completely Mediterranean. You guys need to protect your throats. You're like the 3rd one in here. She's had a sore throat. Like there were 2 of you presenting. Did you guys win? Oh, we went 5 and 6. Oh, wow. And so this is how the other thing is, these are people who are 100 right now. So they would have been born like in 1920. And so it is before all the processing and stuff. But I don't really see McDonald's popping up in this village. This is another piece, and I get to it in a later slide. And it's part of your guys this week is actually a fun week. And it's an easy 7 days because you're probably already, if you've been following along and doing adaptions, you're probably doing a lot of it. But the importance of social time and that they have a social network. So several of you have said like your importance of doing things with your friends. And so they're always eating meals together. And the men are playing cards. And that's a picture of what would be apparently a typical meal. This is not tofu, that would be their local cheese. Which is heavenly. When I was in Costa Rica, I had local cheese, and in Nepal, which is totally different, but right, they have all their sheep. And so they're getting fresh milk every day. Everything's locally grown and probably lots of eggplant. And so then right across an island. So this is actually an island. Greece has a whole bunch of islands. The guy who's our limo driver, when we go to visit my mom, she has a guy pick us up, and the one guy's from Greece. And everybody there has like 3 houses, and one of them's on an island. It's like their summer house. And it's like nonchalantly talking about it. But again, that like they're waking up to that view. And again, their sweets are minimal, and they're gonna be not from the store. Vegetables, greens. These guys are eating more like I would like, because they're also getting legumes in there. Fish are going to be the ones they're walking out there and catching and eating that day for dinner. And right, the olive oil. Most olive oil we're getting in the store is not real olive oil. So, and a lot of the infomercials out there, because they are of people pushing olive oil, are getting money off of it. This olive oil is being fresh pressed right there, and then they're using it because they all have an olive press, which is going to make it very different. There is some place in town, apparently, that does fresh pressed olive oil. I just don't know where it is. I could probably find out. I've always been interested. This is the other thing, and it's my reminder, you guys, your next topic is a spice. Or you think of it as an herb. Oregano is definitely one of those there. And so they're also adding a lot of spices or herbs. So herbs are like this amazing medicinal quality in them. And so this was just something from there that they actually forage for wild greens. Don't do that unless you actually know what you're doing, because you can die. This one. This is every day when I leave, my dog and cat kind of look at me from the bed, nod, and go back to sleep. And right, putting your family first, focusing on veggies and stuff, and right, adding in dandelion. So even though it's spice, I do sometimes let people pick an herb if. Oh, and this one, I don't wear a watch anymore, but stop checking your watch. It's really a wonderful thing. And this is the other thing you'll see, and of course, they're having their picture taken, but they're not like you guys. You guys have all practiced since you were like in 8 or 9, taking selfies, so you always have that perfect smile. These guys, I don't even know what the picture's gonna look like, but the joy and the playfulness. She's dressed exactly. My grandmother was from Sicily. Never spoke a word of English. And again, this whole thing of eating as a community, eating with your family, and of course they have the perfect weather where they can eat outside. And then Okinawa, Japan. That one was not a surprise to me at all. And you can see this is probably would be another one of my first choices, because I absolutely love sweet potatoes. The Okinawa sweet potatoes, I'm pretty sure are the purple ones, but I might be wrong. I think I have a picture, but the playfulness. And so this is called, I guess it's pronounced moai, which is good that they told me that. A group of lifelong friends who provide for social, financial, health, and spiritual support, which is beautiful. So like the 3 of you ladies, here you are, you're a moai. That could be you someday. You're like horrified to think that, but it is. It's actually beautiful. I mean, I look at that and go, that's like amazing to think that they've been like best friends for 80, 90 years, right? And that they're still, they stay in their community. I love this picture, the playfulness in that picture. And there's some mushrooms. So you guys, G-Bombs is due today, and I'm laughing because I've done it now, right? And so I know that half of you are going to be writing, did not like this week, did not like the mushrooms. A couple of you are already like, or it's the onions. It's either the mushrooms or the onions. And that's fine. You can say that, but the rest of it, hopefully you enjoy. You don't have to eat mushrooms this week, but you can kind of get more of a choice. And of course, rice, but it's really the sweet potatoes. And that is the big thing. So when Japan actually hit Pearl Harbor, and then we went to Japan, there was that whole thing. A lot of people, they were suddenly surprised to find this area of Japan that these people were living to be 90, 100, and we're thriving. We're still really active. And had to do, and they thought, oh, is there something magical about the sweet potatoes? Well, we're not eating all the crappy food that we do now, but it's more than just the sweet potatoes. It's the community. It's they're eating whole food, plant-based. So rather than saying, my students, my other class, are you vegetarian? Are you this? Are you that? To be able to say, no, I'm whole food, plant-based. And you can eat some meat, but do we need to eat the amount of meat? And so this would be their pyramid, which there are some sweet. They're going to be homemade sweet, which is actually even higher than the condiments. I love this pyramid. And there it is. There's their purple sweet potatoes. You can find them at like natural grocers or Asian markets and stuff. I like them, but never see where to get them. And that is also one of my favorite. Those are actually carrots. You can tell from these leaves here. Yeah. And don't do the advice where they say you should eat them right out of the ground, so you're getting some dirt, that you should eat dirt. Trust me, I tried it. It's really, it tastes like dirt. So clean the carrot so you can taste the beautiful carrot. So this is a specific peninsula, not a pernicious peninsula. I know my spelling, I love it. Off of Costa Rica, or in Costa Rica, and anywhere you go. I don't know if it's on the east it's on the Atlantic or Pacific, because Costa Rica is in Central America, so it has both Atlantic and Pacific. But having been to Costa Rica, it's really the big key is it's so green. The other thing is all these people are active because they're in places that are just gorgeous, and we are here where we live. We have the Columbia River Gorge, we have Mount Hood, we have so much. You don't even have to go that far. You can go like to Mount Tabor and just go for a hike. You can just go for a hike in your own neighborhood. You suddenly find these huge, just hike around this campus. There's these huge Douglas firs all over the place that are just amazing. But again, so they do have some dairy. It's a significant part of their diet, but it's completely their dairy. And eating a lot of whole grains, but they're whole grains is the key there. And there's something here. Corn. It says most of that is corn, which would make sense for where it's at. And right, just the smile and the amount of green. Something that actually kind of devastated me when I was in Costa Rica was actually the lack of the rainforest. Costa Rica apparently has preserved more rainforest than anywhere else in Central America, and most of theirs has been cut down. They made it a lot for anywhere. In all those places for cutting down the rainforest for your Big Mac, so that we can graze cattle down there. And you can't graze cattle in the middle of the forest. And so it's for our hamburgers. And this is just gorgeous. I'm not sure, those look like potatoes, but plantain would also be so similar as what Sheila had talked about. And the fresh made cheese, which Mexico has also the fresh made cheese, and just the beauty of Mother Nature. And that's Joey and me and the waterfalls and stuff. And the other thing, which he never mentioned in the Blue Zone, but really Costa Rica probably is there because that's where that's one of the places chocolate comes from. And so you find chocolate carrots everywhere. All right, and then the fifth one that he picked was a place in the US. He is an American, and it is specifically this place in California. And it is because it's where the Seventh-day Adventists, it's very highly, mostly them. And they are, a high majority of them are very strict vegetarian. So vegetarian would be somebody who still eats dairy and eggs. Many of them are going to be strict vegan, where it will do no animal products at all. Although veganism has become like a political statement, it's a little bit funky. And also often very unhealthy because gummy bears are vegan and that's pure high fructose corn syrup. But they live 10 years longer than most Americans, not just there, but anywhere. And it is because of several things. They basically don't have coronary heart disease or type 2 diabetes, or it's extremely low compared to the rest of our country. And this is anywhere in the country where you run into these. And it has to do with they follow a very similar diet that I've kind of been preaching. Lots of fruits. And again, it is interesting that the other ones, I forget what it said for Costa Rica. I would assume they're eating a lot of fruit. Lots of vegetables. They do have some dairy. Some of them will eat a little bit of meat, but the ones who do eat meat, it's a small amount. It's more like a flavoring. So in Nepal, they ate meat, but it would be more like a flavoring. The legumes. So legumes are so important. The other thing that's really key is they are a type of Christianity. And so that was something else I get to, that all 5 of these areas are areas that had a very strong tie to their religion, and whatever that might have been. So it looks like 4 of them would have been Christian, and then the Japanese were probably Buddhist. And the importance of eating together and praying, saying gratitude before a meal. And again, importance of being together, and that is a woman doing. Right. When I first tried to do this, I fell on my face probably over 100 times, and then Pimpa gets down, it's like, is this what you're trying to do? And he does it right away. It's going to be much easier. Guys can do it right off. And then that teacher showed me the correct way to do it, and it's very simple. But here we go. This is the average American food pyramid. And you can see the grains down here, which get a bad name because they're highly processed and then fortified with highly processed vitamins that are actually toxic for us. And so Brenna shared a story this past weekend that a friend of hers, daughter, the same age as a lot of you, ended up was slowly deteriorating away and ended up in the hospital. And they could not figure out what was wrong. And it was a vitamin deficiency. They all missed it for months and months and months. And her friend said, you know, she's going to eat whole food now, no more fast food. And the thing that was interesting to me that I was thinking about is the bread that you're eating in this fast food joint is going to be supplemented with vitamin B1. But it's not in the form that our body can actually take in. So all the stuff that's supplementing is actually causing more issues than not. But yeah, the oil and the salt and the sugar and this is just somebody's joke that you're going to get tons and tons of pasta, prepackaged bread and stuff. And this is the Blue Zone Pyramid that you guys get to do this week. And it has 4 key parts. So eating wisely is here, and that's basically the advice I give you. You can go on a website and find recipes and stuff, but it's more than just that. It's that we're going to walk through these 4, and what I love is the base of the pyramid. If they didn't put this on the top, they put it as the most important. The cornerstone is belonging, having a healthy social network, even if it's just one other person, but having that safe place, that social group, connecting with religion, and not being afraid of that. And number 9 right there, which would be the very base, is prioritizing family. But we're going to walk through them. So I started at the top, and these are pictures mostly of Joey. So when I go on hikes places, almost always people when we get to wherever we're going, they take a nap, which I thought was really funny when I was making this. This is the highest place we'd ever been, which is in Nepal, but that's Joey when he was much younger. That's my twin brother, moving naturally, being playful, having fun. And so I am blessed having a twin. And this is what I do while other people are taking naps on top of the mountain. I go and do my Qigong. So it's like Tai Chi or yoga, but it's a very specific, I'll talk about more, I think, in the next talk, but Qi is prana or life energy. And that is actually, I'm pretty sure, we're looking down on Yellowstone. So we're in Montana on a really beautiful hike. And then I think there was a huge thunderstorm came in as we were hiking down because it's Montana. And you expect that. And then actually it was really cool. That night we drove and we camped. We pulled up on an exit and camped right there in our back of our vehicle. And I think I was on the Continental Divide and it started raining. And so I'm like, Joey, on this side of the car, the water is falling off. It's going to the Pacific. And on that side of the car, I know I'm really geeky. It's going into Atlantic because that's what the Continental Divide is. And so I don't know. I didn't have my geek guess. All right, the second step down was having less stress. And this is a reminder that humans can turn on the stress response. We are the only species. That's what makes us special. This idea of consciousness that we can actually turn on that stress response. And so again, I recommended many books, and so hopefully Mari put this on your book list. Any of Joe Dispenza's books, whatever you can find, like on sale. I get them at Goodwill, people. But anyway, Dr. Joe Dispenza, he has actually a lot of stuff on YouTube you can listen to. Yeah, and he is where this idea of we can either be in survival, where we're in that stress mode all the time, and we want to all get out of that mode, and we want to be in the creative mode, where you're finding joy and bliss and love in every moment. And so that has to do with cortisol, which we'll talk about a little bit here. And so animals, they have stress, and then they get, they don't really have that, but somebody made that. That is the love hormone. So you can be in survival, which is going to be cortisol and adrenaline and always fear, right? So we can all create it. Or you can be in creation, which that's the love hormone, which is oxytocin. And again, always choosing love and allowing your mind to blossom. So rather than being in this state where you're chewing your tail off, your imaginary tail, that you see yourself as blossoming, taking that time out. It might just be for 2 minutes. Sorry. So most of us are in a state of perpetual stress, and that is cortisol. And so some of the things, and these are a lot of words, it comes right from my biochem class where we talk about it. But if you take anatomy, you get to talk about this. This is all happening in the liver. So LV means liver. So gluconeo, I highlighted neo, is your body when you're stressed starts making new glucose. And that means you're not getting it from your diet because you're stressed. Even if your stress is eating, your liver is feeling the stress, and this, which is made from cholesterol, is telling your liver, we need more glucose because we have stress. And it starts making it, does anybody know from what? It's not making it from carbohydrates. It's not making it from storage. It's making it from your protein. You have big muscles around this area, and then you start breaking them down. And so all these people who are wanting to build up muscle need to learn. That's one of the things with yoga, that you do build muscle because you're learning to relax. This is lipid or fat genesis. So you're actually breaking down the protein. You don't actually need the glucose because you're just sitting there as a couch potato or sitting in your car, or just sitting there creating these scenarios, and it now changes it into fat and it stores it around the belly. And right, you can just go and look around and you see that. And it's been really cool reading. Several people have written at the end of their 7 days, gone down one pant size, gone down another pant size. When I said nutrition, same thing happened because I was just like, what? Your thyroid, your liver's just compromised because it's trying to deal with this. Your immune system. And so that's one of the, we're like in the 9th week, and 2 weeks is finals week. So your guys' final is you do a spice. You write a paper on a spice, make a fun, healthy dish with it. You have fun with it instead of doing an exam. But most people tend to get sick a couple days after finals because of the stress decreases your immune system. So you want to keep eating healthy and having a good attitude. Cholesterol levels are going to go up because cholesterol is making cortisol. And I think I talked about DHEA on the slide or two. So what basically is happening is you can either make cortisol or you can make DHEA from the cholesterol. And so if you're stressed, you're going to be making cortisol and you're not making DHEA. DHEA is needed to make the sex hormones, progesterone, and testosterone, so they're going to be lower. And somehow in their melatonin is connected too. So your sleep. And you've all been there where your sleep is not very good. So the question is, how can we shift this to decrease the cortisol? And you all know. And actually that's what, so this would be the gingerbread man, sorry. That would be high cortisol. So when you're stressed or angry or afraid or just a hot mess, you know, getting upset at your computer or just staring at your computer all the time. All-nighters never work. This whole thing, so many of you have written, I'm running around the clock, I'm so busy. I say, are you really busy? Do you really think you're busier than I am? It drives me crazy when my colleague or student or anybody's like, oh, I'm so busy, I'm so busy. We're all busy. Except I'm not busy because I make choices to use different words. And so your melatonin and cortisol, if you notice, are always opposite. And so if your cortisol is always high, then your melatonin can't be. And I've mentioned this before. If you have blue screen, your phone, your computer, I don't know where he got this number from, but they say after 10 o'clock at night, you lose capacity to make melatonin. That would be for those of us who are probably past the age of 25, you should not be doing stuff after 10 o'clock. You have to shift your life. It's a huge shift. Do it slowly. Probably because there's that whole thing with like people in their late teens that your clocks are shifted slightly. So it might be a little bit later, but you should not be up submitting stuff at 1 or 2 in the morning. You need to sit there and say, that assignment's been there for many days. I'm the one who's procrastinating. I'm gonna be that student. Somebody's already turned in their G-bombs last night, so. What's you? Which is always a surprise. Sunlight, and the sun is now getting close enough to us that we are going to start making vitamin D. So vitamin D is also made from cholesterol. So you're shifting to make vitamin D in your skin, so beautifully talked about, and so you're not making the stress. And that is why when you go to places that are sunny, everybody, is it because we're happier that everybody else seems happier? Or is it, right? You have to wonder. And that's the thing. That's the real trick. Can you be happy even dancing in the rain? It's really fun dancing in the rain. And so when you're exercising, being more playful with your exercise, laughter. Again, the Tibetan monks that I got to work with, they just have this perpetual smile on their face, sleeping, taking naps, and eating more whole food, plant-based, and the importance of gratitude and prayer. And I have no idea if that is real or not, but that is pretty amazing. Is that a squirrel or an otter? It's an otter, right? I don't know how they got that picture, but that is one of my favorite pictures. So DHEA, I threw this slide in here. The ones that the number is this guy, I think I mentioned it. They went through the molecules that increase when you're meditating. And so DHEA is often called the longevity molecule. So this is also perfect since we're talking about longevity today. Rather than, and I actually love how Brenna answered my very first question. I said, what's my topic today? And she said longevity. She didn't say aging. And so it's the words you choose. So are you aging? My mom, her church, they call all the seniors or the elders, they call them sages. And so they have the sages have different, they actually have a person who's in charge then all these activities, and I'm actually part of them, and they're always like, when's she coming back? When's she coming back? But I thought that was a great, like, ingenious, like call them sages instead of the elders and stuff, which is respectful, but sages is because, and they're so playful. I was trying to find a good picture of them to include in here, but kind of forgot until I was walking here and couldn't find one on my phone yet. Right, it's longevity, and so they say if they take a measurement, DHEA is made from cholesterol. It actually will tell you your true age, so whatever levels your DHEA is. When you go through menopause, your DHEA levels drop because your estrogen levels pretty much plummet straight down. Not quite as fast when you give childbirth, and in like 24 hours you have a complete reversal of all your hormones. Which is really amazing when you go back and look at that how we survived that. And it's because you're holding the most precious being in your arm at that moment. And so you deal with that menopause, you're not holding the most precious person. And so there'll be holes in the wall, or broken refrigerator door that keeps breaking. There's a hole in my wall. I'm like, don't fix it. It's my humbling moment. I saw a talk when I was it was like 30 years ago, and this woman was a naturopath, and she was like the kindest, softest spoken. And she's like, well, I'm going through menopause, and my daughter's going through puberty, and so there's days my husband and son just have to leave. They come home and there's, a wall is missing, and they're like, how's it going? And so it happens. You get over it. And right, anyway, it's a steroid, which means it's made from cholesterol, and it is, I had never heard of it before and now because the supplement business is so big, it's everywhere. I'd always heard it had to be a cream that you took topically, but you can actually buy it in pill form, which is fascinating to me. But the thing is you can actually increase it through meditation or prayer, or just taking that time out. That everything you do becomes a meditation. But when you're eating, you're just sitting there and you're being present with the people you're with in conversation and joy and stuff. We're being present here. And this was fascinating to me. So we have you're in Berkshire, right? But they're saying, and this is true that, that we're creating waves, but I'm sure you have to pay a certain amount of money for this boosting of your delta waves, where you can just learn how to sit quietly and don't be trying to overachieve and say, I'm gonna sit for 30 minutes. Some people can do it. It took me a long time to build up to it, but your adrenals are going to release cholesterol, and that cholesterol can either make cortisol or it can make DHEA. And right, the other thing with that, if you're waking up every morning and this is the first thing you do, and I know several of you and some of you are like grinning because you know you do this, but and it's checking your Facebook, does anybody answer my post or whatever, your Instagram account, see if you have emails, that you don't want to do that in the mornings. I had a student last term, and that was one of the things he did for this week. So you're doing all 4 parts for the week, and he made it that he didn't look at his cell phone for until an hour after he got up. So, you know, you might look at it to see what time it is, but not looking at your Facebook, not being pulled into Google, whatever. And so giving yourself space to wake up with gratitude, that when you wake up rather than looking at your phone, just wake up and lay there for a minute or two. And so if you're somebody who does have a strong religious, start with a prayer, just take a few moments, or just sending gratitude to whoever you need to. So you can think of specific people and that you're grateful just that you woke up, because some people don't wake up today. And you did, you woke up, you're still alive. It's a great day. You can do affirmations, and it's really great. You have to find your own affirmations. There are some really terrible ones out there, and there's some really good ones, and then memorizing one. And you can do that, or memorizing a psalm like Psalm 23. Everybody should have that psalm memorized. Right? And just saying that first thing, placing your hands on your heart and smiling. Because if you're praying and not smiling, if you're doing an affirmation and not smiling, then why do it? That really, it's a game changer. You can place your hand on your belly, wherever. Everybody's gonna have a different place that they naturally will gravitate towards. In yoga, they teach you all these different positions. I wouldn't worry about all that. Just allow your body to be how it's comfortable. If it's on its side, that's great. If it's on the back, that's great. It's, yeah. And if you don't have a pet, you should get a pet. It's there amazing. You have a lot.
I have a lot if anyone needs one.
Puppies a couple weeks ago. Her dog ate her. What she said is, my dog got loose. I think she's pregnant. The neighbor dog and her were.
They're
And then
so
like a
cute.
month later, so Big Betty, that was,
Oh,
yeah.
couple more
And
weeks.
that's my puppy that I wake up with. Yeah. So do more of what makes you happy, and I have a slide that talks about that. And also with that, we've seen this slide before, and you guys did this when we had that mindful week. And so this week, you're kind of incorporating everything. Not quite a grand finale then next week, but revitalizing, taking a deep breath. So that's been one of my goals, because I eat way too fast during the turning. And so yesterday I actually got done after that I was not the first one done eating. So taking those deep breaths where your belly actually moves, so that means your diaphragm is pushing down on there. And that helps massage chewing your food, which, we can look at the physical thing, which is helping to liquefy it. And the importance of saying gratitude. So for those who aren't afraid of the word grace, it is called Amazing Grace for a reason. Last time when I was at a retreat, on like the 6th day, my teacher said the G word. She said God, and I came out of my meditation smiling, going, because he was like, some of you have to really get over your fear of God. And I was amazed because we were on a Buddhist retreat, and I was like, thank you. I almost started going, woo. Yeah, right. That we're not going to be, but it did. I had to go through my time too of transitioning to what my relationship was with the divine. And to not be afraid of that. And it is your relationship. But what it says behind here is which came first, the healthy mindset or the healthy microbiome. And does it really matter which came first? It doesn't, because if you have a healthy mindset, you will have a healthier microbiome. As your microbiome gets healthier, you'll have a healthier mindset and you'll be healthier for the people around you. That third step coming down was eating wisely, and we've talked about that. And again, eating more vegetables. Try some new whole grain that you've never tried. Try a new recipe this week. And then the bottom one was belonging. And so this is a picture I teach a kids class. It started out when Joey was 11 and we joined a homeschool co-op. And I happened to be on sabbatical and it just grew. And then we got kicked out of the church where the co-op met, and they called me and said, everybody wants to still do your class. Can you have the kids come to your house? And have like 17, 12-year-olds like running around my house. I'm like, no. And when COVID happened, I had to move. This is in my driveway. So I had 6 and then 4 high school kids were coming and learning science from me. And this is actually Friday. I didn't get a picture of Mara, but we actually made fractals. So fractal is a repeating geometry. That's actually, if you look at a tree, when you guys drew a tree and then you branched it, you keep repeating the same thing. So tree branching is one. This is the tetrahedral. That is one. And then Mara was next door. She just had an exam. And so I saw her, and it was right, a chemistry exam. You remember those days after a chemistry exam, those of you had me for chemistry. So I gave her a tetrahedral to wear on her head and made her walk in because I know her teacher probably didn't appreciate it. Anyway, but they're all preschool kids. And when I went in that day, I was like, I remember in my morning meditation prayer, I'm like, oh, yeah, this could go one of two ways. I'm teaching earth science. I thought it was supposed to be physical science, but apparently the state changed the curriculum, and I'm teaching earth science for a whole year. And it was supposed to be 3 kids, and there's 12 of them. And I'm like, and they're 15 and 16, because some of them drive. It's scary. Some of them are 14. Anyway, that was in my kitchen. I was like, all I know to do is to do fractals with marshmallows and toothpicks. And I'm like, this could go one of two ways. They're either going to be totally bored, and I'm going to have 2 hours of totally bored 14, 15, 16-year-olds, or they're going to get into it. And they just like totally got into it. We went through 8 bags of marshmallows. Actually, the first kid's like, can we eat them? I'm like, oh, I have a special bag for you, because I was going to do this the week COVID happened and everything closed down. So I have found my COVID marshmallows in my office. And some of them were petrified, and some of them had mold growing on them. He's like, oh, there's mold growing on it. I'm like, well, don't eat those. And then we did this. This was the best part, because the girls actually read the instructions, which I stopped even printing out. But I went to the guys and I said, you guys can eat a marshmallow. Do you know the marshmallow? Does anybody here know the marshmallow test? They do this with kids, like little kids, and they'll give them a marshmallow. And they say, if you don't eat it for the next half hour during class, I will give you 2. So you get 2 marshmallows instead of 1. But if you eat it, that was it. And so up to when I go to elementary school, and so every 10 minutes they get 2, and then 4. And so we're doing actually, was it 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. So every 10 minutes, I would add the next in that sequence. I forget the name of it. So anyway, the boys were all like, yeah, because the boys don't behave. I'm sorry. And then I get to the girls, and they're like just shoving marshmallows in their face, and they're like, oh yeah, we've already eaten half the bag. And I'm like, well, so the whole test, it's a psychological test, because then they follow these kids 10 years later. And the kids who did not eat the marshmallow and waited are successful in college, in their careers. And the ones who ate the marshmallow are the dropouts. And I'm telling the girls they're going to be full of dropouts, and they're like, that's okay. And I saw the guys, they're all going to be wearing suits and walking by them and saying, here, you want a marshmallow? But anyway, so we had a lot of fun. That was the week before. We were dyeing eggs. We extract dye from like turmeric, which you wanted turmeric smoother, right? Didn't you ask me like a month ago if you could have turmeric as your spice? You did? No. All right, well, turmeric is available for some of you who still wanted it. And that was actually this weekend, we burned junk food. And one of my helpers who's been with me for 12 years, he was there with his little 5-year-old daughter. And so he's heard me do the talk 3 times because every 4 years. And he said, I stopped eating chips. And you did the talk, because I do a half-hour talk first. I did it for you guys about how bad their diet is. But after we burn, and we get huge flames from burning Fritos and Doritos, I do bring in marshmallows. These ones. The other thing is with this, there was a huge marshmallow fight that went on for most of the class. Like marshmallows would just be thrown across the room at different people. None ever hit me. Everybody cleaned everything up, and I was like, there's 1 of 2 ways you can take everything. I went actually on Friday to a birthday party for a 3-year-old. And his mom had made, it was gorgeous, a chocolate mud cake. It had 2 monster trucks on it. And so she had her, they did blah, blah, blah. And then the dad decides after everybody got their cake, the kid and him would play monster trucks through the mud. And she like goes, I was gonna have more cake tomorrow. And you could see she was like, this is not gonna go down well. And I just went up to her and I said, there's 2 ways you can take this. You can be really upset. Or you can go and get more monster trucks and let everybody just play in the cake. And you could see her mindset change, and she went and dug up a whole bunch more monster trucks, and all the guys were there like going through and all. So, and then they cleaned up, I guess, at some point. I don't know, I left. You guys can get a cookbook that you're going to get to follow, find a recipe. And these are some of the guidelines that they have. I think it's on the page. And again, they're guidelines for what you're trying to do. You guys have all slashed your sugar. You're not eating eggs a day, you're reducing is the key word. And it says retreating from meat. So it doesn't mean you can't eat meat, but try something new. And right, we've talked about the importance of eating nuts, try and eat beans. You don't have to eat mushrooms this week if you don't want to. We're cutting out the processed food and stuff. So that's what the theme for the week is eating like the blue zones, which rather than having to supplement, you're not only eating like them, you are also being part of your community. So spend more time with the people you need to. Spending time in mindfulness, whatever that's going to mean to you. It goes backwards if you push the wrong button. So the other half of my talk is other things that will increase longevity. And this is what intermittent fasting is all about. So intermittent fasting has become a buzzword. I'm pretty sure you've probably all heard of it. I don't know how many of you partake in it. I actually do intermittent fasting because it's how we're supposed to eat. And so this is interesting. I forget what the letters stand for, but it is the idea that you're only eating, rather than eating for 24 hours, you're limiting the amount of time that you eat. They have done a lot of research. I have a picture of a guy later on who is the premier guy down at the University of Southern California. He's actually originally from Italy. And this is calorie restriction. This is like no restriction at all. And this must be intermittent fasting. And so most people, it's like a 10-hour day. So if you start eating at 8 a.m., you're going to stop at 6 p.m. And 10 or 12 hours is a great place to start. And once you get used to it, you're trying to get yourself down. They think it's a 5 to 6 hour window is what we're supposed to be. So I do better. I don't eat until later in the day. Some people, like my mom, she's in her way. She has to eat when she gets up. She is set that she has to eat. It took me a while, because you do go through like you're craving food. at certain times of the day, and it's getting past that. And so that's why I said you have to start gently and be like, okay, I'll do a 12-hour window and bump your breakfast back by an hour or something like that. You can have beverages, it's just you can't add stuff to your coffee. So you can have water or tea if your coffee needs to be loaded with stuff, which is supposed to be that. And so some people, you know, a lot of it is that you're supposed to do breakfast and then lunch is smaller and then dinner. And so when I went to the silent retreat the first 3 times, I did this where I only had breakfast and lunch, and I didn't eat dinner. And then one time I walked through the cafeteria when they're eating dinner, and it was like they had these lentil soup. And I was like, I'm eating dinner. And I realized I don't really like the breakfast that they were serving. It's actually now when I go, I skip breakfast. My body seems to thrive if I don't have breakfast. And so it's really, you have to find your thing. This is a collection of all the different studies. And that is actually one of the things to point out, that every species they have done the study on, you extend the life of the species significantly. And right here, they say the trend is noted. For humans, it's hard to do because if we're extending our life by 50%, the people are still alive. So we don't fully know. They can just look at certain markers. But these are some of the other things, I guess, that are happening there. So that's the thing, is all studies have been done in rodents, so mice especially, and fruit flies, because fruit flies, I think, only live like 2 weeks, even though it seems like soon that they live forever, because they're always in there. And there's mitochondria, which is where ATP is made. But yeast, again, also, they're living long. The little Coelium, which is a worm. By the way, they have more DNA genes than we do. In case, yeah, we're gonna talk about DNA in a moment. But there's the tertian greens. Here we go. There's rock. We see a decrease. Resveratrol is red wine. The grapes, you don't have to have wine. That's that dark grape. And that's the molecule they isolated from there, and it's now become this thing everybody supplements with for longevity and stuff. I get to that guy in a minute. Just eat grapes. I like grapes. Some people don't. But this is that SERT gene. It is what they found, that if you can upregulate that SERT gene, these species are all living longer. And so for humans, all we can say is your lipid profile becomes like phenomenal, like perfect, like beyond perfect. And so we can just observe that all of your markers are looking great. For all the other species, we can say, yes, they increase. This was a quote from something, and so it was in a primate, and so it was that increased their lifespan, but their brain integrity was compromised. And so I'm not sure fully what that meant, because then also from the same thing was the difference. This was the calorie restricted monkey, and you can see he did not age like the other monkey. They apparently are twins. And also the whole thing with, and I don't know, actually, I'm sorry, I don't know if it's the exact same monkey over time. That's what I cannot remember, or if they're twins, but the whole thing, my cat came to me and he had issues like that, and he is on a restricted diet. So our common Western diet, right, is the whole idea is we have to decrease this, and our ideal diet is we're eating more nutritious food and decreasing the amount of calories that we eat. If you're eating real food, you naturally decrease the calories because they have so much fiber. Your body feels more full because it's filled with nutrients. When you're eating this food, there's no nutrients, and so you're always craving more. Plus, it gets digested too fast. And your microbiome is probably wanting food. And right, so we see this increase. So calorie restriction is not, I remember when I was in graduate school, these two women were on a different diet all the time. It's not how to diet, it's how to have a healthy lifestyle. And they were restricting their calories to 800 a day. I probably easily eat a couple thousand calories a day, and I'm doing it in a small window. But this was, they took obese mice and they let them eat, that's what the AL, that they can eat whenever they want, or time restricted. And so the obese mice, given the crappy hamburger, kind of crappy food, I mean, they didn't give them a hamburger, basically ground up. They became morbidly obese, but if they ate the same food, but they had a restriction to, I don't know, they don't show what the window is. They were obese still, but they were fit. It's interesting, and they obviously lived longer. We throw in a lean mouse and give them apparently high fructose corn syrup, and they become obese or they stay lean if we keep them calorie restricted. And down here, we have a lean mouse, and so this is actually some of the people I've listened to. They do, on the weekend, they will eat a regular schedule because they're eating with their kids and stuff. You can sit down and eat with people where you're not eating, where you're drinking tea and stuff, and people, you can say, I'm just not hungry yet. You don't have to give, you can if they're interested to know the full thing. But they found that didn't seem to make a difference. I thought the guy I listened to said, no, you really need to maintain the schedule. But if you're going like camping, you're doing something special, you're going on a cruise, then absolutely. Like when I go to my mom, we eat she needs to eat at 1. We can actually sometimes push it back a little bit. And so I do, Joey and I both adjust our schedule. And then when I come back, it's really hard to get back to where I was. I was really good back in November and stuff, but anyway, what all this leads to is that word. Do you guys remember that? So this, I think this question shows up again. So some of these questions in this week, it might look like a huge amount of questions, but it's not. So it's autophagy or autophagy. Is how some people say it. And so remember what that actually is. So auto is self and phage is eating. So that's often how they say it, it's self-eating, that the cells have to get rid of the waste. So the way I think of it is it's a recycling system for the cell. And it won a Nobel Prize, this guy from Japan, looking at longevity, and it is the recycling of the proteins so we can reuse those amino acids. But everything, our cells have to go through their natural phases, and we want them to end up releasing the nutrients they had as we make new cells. And so it's our way of cleaning out the damaged cells and regenerate new healthy cells in autophagy. And these are like all the things looking at Alzheimer's or all the different neurodegenerative cancers, immune systems, and any kind of infection, and any kind of stress. And so the question is, how can we increase it? And why I have that is, well, insulin apparently messes it up. GH is growth hormone, and that's the slide I forgot to put in there. So growth hormone is something a lot of people supplement with because they say it promotes healthy aging. And I'm not a fan of that. The growth hormone is something as a child you have high levels of, and I think I can safely say most of us are grown. The big thing that actually increases it is the intermittent fasting. And so you have longevity because autophagy is what is going to give you the longevity if we're wanting to get the science in there. So you're eating, again, start with, play with it this week. Say, you know what? Yeah, I do. I suddenly realized I eat my first meal at 8 a.m. I'm having that muffin with my coffee or whatever. And then I am eating at 10 o'clock. I'm munching on stuff. I'm saying I'm going to be mindful. And most people do an 8-hour window. Give yourself time to build up to your window. So start with 12 hours for a month and then maybe 10. The weather's going to be getting nicer. So that will help because when we keep busy, we forget that you're hungry. And so that is the biggest thing. And the other big thing is decreasing your animal protein. And so that's not just meat, that is dairy and eggs. The animal protein actually prevents this. And this is all cells. And juice fasting, which is another thing. I don't know why the juice fasting, and I don't remember where that comes from. These next slides were also really interesting articles. This one was from last year. And this one was a quick Google search. And now Google knows that I looked into these things, but it turns out, so going with what I just said, that lifespans are longer when you eat less protein. So we definitely need protein, but the amount of protein we eat in our culture has never been seen before. And when the high protein fad it's actually still in, because you go to a health club, all these people are in there drinking their protein shakes, which is extremely highly processed protein and is not healthy for them. And they're getting an extra kick in the health club of payback from them buying those drinks and stuff. But anyway, low protein diet in old mice actually improved their metabolic health, reduced frailty, and extended their lifespan. So they actually took mice that were already elderly, and they actually were able to make them healthier and able to use them. When they did this with middle-aged mice, they also saw improvements and they were able to deal with obesity. And then they get into this thing where they say, oh, this is a hormone, and oh, this is a gene. And we can say, and that's great, bravo for them, because really, why don't you just eat whole food? So this would be more like a flavoring, a side dish. Rather than thinking how we've been trained by the meat and dairy industry, that this is the main dish and this is the side dish, can you change your mindset and make this the main dish and that animal products are the side dish? Do you need them at every meal? Anyway, so they figured out, bravo, that there's this that talks to the brain, and it doesn't matter because everything ends up being wrong. I don't think I get to that today. And blah, blah, blah. And they go through this and they say, hey, look, if we activate this, we get more of this, and less of this, and right. Anyway, basically the big story is we live longer and healthier. The ones that they were able to mutate, so they didn't have the gene, they didn't see any changes. So they're like, look, we found the gene. We now know which gene it is. If you remember, there is that thing that I talked about. People are perpetually happy. It's because they end up having a mutation. And it turns out we can all create that mutation in us. And that is giggling and wiggling. And so these are, to me, I did not experiment on animals, but these are the obese mice. And then these would be twins, because with mice, you can make them, they're not actually even twins, they're transgenic mice. They're the exact same mouse. And so they have the exact same DNA, so they're the same thing, and they were just the one they actually mutated, so they were given everything the same. This guy has a mutation, they took him out, and so they couldn't extend his life or her life. This is an article that is just from this year. I don't know where my reference is, but what sarcopenia is, I made this slide last week, and then last night I was looking at them like, what is it? And thankfully I put in what it is. So sarcopenia is, and I apologize, I forgot to, when I came in here, it changed my slides around, but it is this is the quote from Wikipedia or from Google. It's a natural decrease in muscle mass due to aging. And so those words, to me, that's why I put it there. I thought that was interesting, because if we say to you, you're going to lose muscle mass because you're getting older, well, and guess what? You're going to lose muscle mass. What if we changed our mindset and said, no, I'm not? That's like just one possibility. I'm going to actually be stronger. I'm going to stay strong. And so sarcopenia is just this fancy word that says that we see that most people, one of the problems we have is we put most people into a home and they're not allowed to move around. So of course they're losing muscle mass. Or we tell them, oh, no, don't do that. My mom's like, oh, go do that. And so she and her friends are all thriving. So you have frailty, more falls, increase. So coming first, decrease in daily activity. So the study, this is what is recommended. Per body weight, it says about 1.2 to 1.7 grams, which is probably about 50-ish grams of meat a day. That's the playing card size, your fist size of meat. Most Americans are eating much more. They're eating both fists at every meal, right? And so that's how much in a day of not each category of protein, but this was interesting because this was from the paper, and they said that pretty much previous papers had shown when you increase protein consumption, you start seeing anabolic resistance, means that the cells are starting to resist being able to respond correctly. And so, yeah, what is out there? If you give up meat, everybody says, we're gonna get your protein. We're gonna get your protein. You guys have done it to people, and you thought to yourself, but where, some of you have even sent me an email, well, where am I supposed to get my protein? But it turns out we're eating too much protein. And our goal is to thrive now and, you know, for our whole life. This is, this study was done, I don't remember it was England, but somewhere in Europe, and their recommendation, the US is actually very similar. It might have been slightly higher, but it was very similar when I looked up the calculations. But it was really cool. They looked at, it was more a meta-analysis, and so it was a study that was done on twins and triplets. And so they have this huge database of twins and triplets, but they actually lowered it down, so they only had 3,300 because they wanted one that lived in a community, and that they had muscle data on them, so they could look at the different things. And what they found, which was no surprise, is that as you get older, your education level, your BMI, your income is all associated. And that's one of the things, the French paradox, where the whole thing with resveratrol has taken off, because the French eat a lot of cheese, but they aren't obese, and they said they live healthier. They have lower levels of certain things. The French always are eating in groups. It's not so much the red wine. And they also found, it's something called the suitcase studies, that if you look at what's in people's suitcases, you have prediction. People who drink beer tend to be the people who are really the workers out there. And so they're going to have different education levels, they're going to have to work much harder and stuff like that, whereas wine drinkers tend to be the higher educated, they're going to go running. I mean, it's like there's so many other factors that even though we can say, oh, look, resveratrol does that, it's actually looking at all these things. And that's why you guys are in schools, so that your income is where you don't have to work 7 days a week around the clock, everything that people telling me. The thing that was interesting is they saw no significant difference with protein intake and muscle strength. But, and this is interesting because this ad says that they post for seniors that you need to increase your protein intake to eliminate sarcopenia. And they use that word so it sounds big, even though all the studies have shown there's absolutely no correlation with the protein intake, except for this. The ones who actually ate the least amount of protein had more muscle mass, but that's supposed to be less loss of muscle mass and sarcopenia. And so the lower protein intake actually had lower levels of sarcopenia, and the highest levels of protein intake, those that were above the recommendation, had an increase in the amount of this is worded terribly, sorry. So low muscle mass means they don't have enough muscle mass. So they had an increase in having less muscle mass. So I don't know why I didn't just say they had less muscle mass. It's just weird how the studies word stuff. So it's like they're trying to turn you around, but right. So this hypocaloric diet, which they're promoting, they're telling these people, hey, seniors, keep exercising, take your drugs, and eat like high protein. And it turns out pretty much all the studies are showing if you eat high protein, that's not going to your muscles. It's actually for some reason blocking their muscle formation. They looked at it, the whole point was that you're going to look at twins, so they're going to have a relationship familiar, so you're not dealing with genetics being a variable. And the other thing they noted at the end was that there's been actually a lot of studies that show when people eat more fruits and vegetables, they have more strength in their hands and stuff, which is a huge thing. And we've worked with the stages and stuff. And so really, rather than saying, hey, we should be doing this and that, anytime you opt to do more vegetables, to make a salad when you're going to a potluck, I always bring the salad. And there's also other studies that show that diets that are high in protein have lower inflammation. And so diets that are high in protein also have high inflammation. And it turns out the source of protein is the greatest factor too. So animal sources of protein tend to cause less muscle mass, whereas vegetable sources of protein don't have this negative impact. So learning to like your legumes and tofu. And the last piece, which isn't on there, is that they did mention, which is part of why I really respect the study, that it's that thing that just because we're observing this doesn't mean this is the cause of the high protein intake is the cause of sarcopenia. So, but it is very interesting to note that. This is the guy, so that's his name, Walter Longo, and I'm pretty sure, so this week you get to pick 2 videos from the list for the blue zone, and one of them is him, but it's a longer one. I put it on there because a student I had last year, I wanted him to watch it. I actually highly recommend it. I love it. He's Italian, so he has an accent. But you can actually get into it. He actually sells, like you can get the whole diet from him. Like you can get a week's worth of food shipped to you of what you're supposed to eat, which was really fascinating. I forget how old this guy is, but he sings a song with him in one of them. But that's it. Like you get this stuff sent to you, and then you make mushroom soup, and then hopefully add your own mushroom. For those of us who like mushroom soups, are amazing. You add a little bit of peanut butter to it. It like takes it over the top. There's something with peanut butter or almond butter, and then that's like pull out the flavor. Anyway, he's really big into it, and his lab has been really working, and they do think it's like a 5-hour window. And part of I didn't have the slide is a lot of this has to do that your body has to stop releasing insulin. Every time you eat, your body releases insulin, and you have to stop eating for that 12-hour period a day where you're not taking in food. So your body stops releasing insulin, and that means you stop storing calories. You start actually breaking down all the stuff that you stored so that when you do eat, you have a place to store it. And they're thinking it's like a 4 to 5 hour window that actually needs to eat. And so this is his diet. That it does allow, it's mostly plant-based protein, but it does allow for some animal-based protein. There's chocolate in his diet, which is really nice to see, and olive oil. He's from Italy, so he's going to promote that, but fats are good. But you can see protein is not the major part, it's a minor part of the diet. And look at all these grains here, sweet potatoes and vegetables, but they're really big into whole grains, right? And finding a grain you like me and barley do not work out well at all. But I can do other ones. So this is Dan Bruner. I think I have his name on the next slide. So he's the Blue Zones guy, and this is in Costa Rica, it looks like, that guy. And so the thing that was really cool about the Blue Zones is the next step. He's done several books on this because it just took off. They were amazed at what they found. And so a couple of, I think you picked 2 videos this week, and 2 of them are Blue Zone videos. They're TED Talks, and they're pretty amazing. So you'll gravitate towards what you want. But their question they had was, can we create a blue zone? So can we go somewhere that's really unhealthy? So it's smack in the middle of the US, they went to Minnesota, and Iowa, place in California. They went to a couple different places, said, can we pick some of the unhealthiest places and create a blue zone? And they were blown away because they created one from the markers of looking at the people in like 2 years. They thought it would take 20, 30, 40 years, we say 40, because you have to have that generational change of like the people from Exodus, you had all the people die off and before the generation was ready to make a change. And you guys really need to be the ones who making the change because you guys went totally the wrong way. You got sucked in by social media and all the apps on your phone. Oh, if I go to Dutch Bros, I get a free drink, right? And several of you work as baristas and you see that the people, it really sucked everybody in. It's on Facebook. Oh, they have a drink. Oh, they gave me a coupon for 10% off, but after paying $5, I don't know how you guys have money to buy that stuff. Anyway, I don't know why we went through this, and I think that picture's on there. This is like my dream to be able to do cartooning, and I just can't. I sit in church, this woman who actually was my student 25 years ago, and she like is doodling the whole time, and she'll doodle his whole sermon. He's preaching like this, and it's really amazing. She works up at OHSU, and she obviously already has some artistic skills. I have not been able to find this YouTube video because I would have you guys watch it because it would be where they're doodling and talking with it and they put it in high speed. So the talking is normal and the doodling. But anyway, there's his name. And you can just Google blue zones if you're interested. Loving without suffering jealousy. So in Buddhism, they call it joyful appreciation, where you can be joyful for other people's success. So when somebody else, like, Keely got to talk about vitamin D, you can be, when she got up there as the last one, you're all thinking, she's the one who got vitamin D. I wanted vitamin D. Yeah, never argue. Wouldn't that be awesome? Great discretion. And so one of his books, and this is the one that intrigued me the most, he then looked for the blue zones of happiness. And then they did a whole other National Geographic on that. And so what he said is he started out with facets of happiness that he could measure. And these are three of the blue zones that they found for happiness. Is they first looked at, are you satisfied with your life? So rate your life on a scale from 1 to 10. And you could probably go online and find their test. And that is actually Singapore. So they found that Singapore was the happiest country in Asia. Singapore is actually an island and everybody there is educated, and I'm pretty sure there's no homelessness and stuff because it's a small island and so it's highly developed and stuff. So you're not dealing with issues that we have other places. The thing is, it is Asian, so if you are a student who is Asian, you can appreciate this, that they actually prefer security over freedom. So I'm not sure I would be happy with how they do it. They have very conservative values in the sense that you have to have this purpose in life. You have to have school, right? So you go to school, become a computer programmer or doctor or lawyer. The second one had to do with purpose. So how engaged are you with your life? Are you doing meaningful things? And that's really the key. And I was thinking about this weekend and how blessed I am because I get to teach. And I really feel extremely blessed with my students because you guys actually come to school. Because a lot of people don't. A lot of people your age are just sitting around doing like nothing or flipping hamburgers and they have no ambition. And so I get to make a difference and I get to learn all the time. And that's what you really want. And it doesn't have to be your job. Your job doesn't define you. But like I said, I now do like 4 outreach classes with kids, 3. And so it was actually Denmark, which is not surprising. It's a socialized country. So everybody has healthcare. Everybody, they have like, they work 4 days a week. A lot of places, most other countries only work 4 days a week or 4. Yeah, we're the like crazy ones who work 6 days a week. Everyone is educated, and the importance, one of the things that was key with all these is the importance of family. And really of embracing your family. And also they don't have this, there's no need to keep up with the Joneses. That you're not that person, it's your life, and pursuing what you love. Not necessarily, and there we go, they work a 37-hour work week, they pursue their passions, they use their strengths. And the third one, which I absolutely loved, was how much do you enjoy your life on a day-to-day or moment to moment? Every moment you should find that joy. And so this was what they did, is they asked you to, and this is what you can do if you want to try meditation, is just at the end of the day, just take a few minutes. And you can do this laying in bed, and remember over the last 12 or 24 hours, part of it, and just reviewing it. Don't be attached, but remembering what made you feel joy and laughter. How many times did you laugh during the day? And so Costa Rica got it again. Costa Rica, I think, shows up in all the blue zones that he did. So that's Joey and me in Costa Rica, and this is why Costa Rica, and this is what the people said, because nature is so accessible all around you. It's so green that everybody's basic needs are covered. And they prioritize, again, social interaction. They will never work the extra hours like we do, the overtime and stuff. And that's a beautiful picture, grandma, or great grandma, and they always prioritize family. And so I don't know why that disappeared. That's one of the things with the Seventh-day Adventists, that they pretty much have a potluck. I don't know if it's every Saturday after church or it's once a month or something, but you see the older movies that after church, everyone would have a big picnic in the church grounds, right? And everybody would stay there for hours after and stuff. And so having big, long lunches, we don't do that. We eat our lunch on the go. We eat like a snack and keep going. And so what happens to that time of having lunch? And the other thing is in Costa Rica, everyone does follow religion. And so that they have so many studies have been shown that people, if you don't like the word religious, you can use the word spiritual or this. But I'm fine with that. And then the other reason Costa Rica gets to be in all of them is because there's chocolate. And you can go to a chocolate tasting, and Mara would actually probably sit front and center like I did. And my hand was up every time they needed somebody to taste or do something. And he started ignoring me. A little bit too as we were at the chocolate tasting. This was actually really cool. It was the happiest cities in our country as well as around the world. And some of the features they found is they were the most bike friendly. So having bicycle paths. So this is one of the things when they created the blue zone, what they did was they made more sidewalks. So I don't know if you guys noticed during COVID, it was actually something that was initiative that happened before COVID. It was just during COVID, they really went for it. There are more sidewalks. They made all the sidewalks in these cap accessible thing, whatever. But what they did is the communities that were the unhealthiest, like the anti-blue zones, the red zones or whatever, they made sidewalks so people could walk. And making bike lanes. However, what they did is like Lisa and Stark, I don't bike on them because they took what was 4 lanes and then there was a bike lane and now they made them 2 lanes and then there's a parking and a bike lane. And me as a bicyclist, I don't actually feel safe in that bike lane anymore because people open their car doors, people pull out like from the side streets because they can't see anymore. And I'm like, whoever designed it was not a regular bike rider. But yeah, biking, and not biking for the exercise as much as for the joy. So I've told you guys the story when I went on the bike ride in April for a sunny day, and I'm out there pedaling. So he's behind me, he's like 2 or 3, and everybody's just aggressive. No, I put away my things. So one guy happened. He was just biking. It's just enjoying it. And so I keep it in a really low gear. I'm not trying, I don't care how far I went. They actually had less fast food, so bikeable, walkable, access to parks and green spaces. Less fast food was an unfortunate thing with COVID. We have a lot more fast food now. So they went in these places that they made into blue zones, they rearranged their supermarkets. And several of the people, and they also started to give talks at the community center on how to cook, how to eat healthier, because a lot of people had no idea. And so teaching them how to cook with vegetables. And so they rearranged the shopping centers, so you had to go through the vegetables first. And I guess a lot of these places, I've been in stores in like little redneck towns, and there really are like, there's a banana, it's the only thing in the store, but it was having a true produce area in the store. And also the absence of billboards. We don't have, oh no, we do. Vermont, there's no billboards in the state of Vermont. They're not allowed. It's like the most, and it's such a beautiful state. And we talked about this. This was serotonin gets the name as the happiness, but they have hormones, probably several things. This was the regular meditators. They're already starting at higher levels. And then after meditation. And so you have to find your way, and there is nothing wrong with doing guided meditations. They're all free on YouTube. You can pay for whatever that app is that you all pay for. You eventually get to the point where you don't need it, unless you're like studying for exams and you're like, I need something. But you have to find your way. And if you fall asleep, because I get to read everybody's little thing where they like do the week of meditation, and how many people are like, yes, I did laying down when I sleep. Like, yeah, I did that so many times. And so I do have a slide here. So it also goes with vibrations, and this is that you guys all know what vibes are. We are actually vibrational beings. So if you go inside us, the atom is 99% emptiness. Then you go deep inside, the electron are itty bitty. Like, I don't even know how they can measure the size of it. They're basically a vibration. And this whole thing of talking about hormones and like what molecules in my food and resveratrol and all that stuff is way too clunky to explain who we are and how fast we react to something. Because I'm not talking about your physical reaction. That reaction goes on inside of you when you do have a response to something like a movie or a phone call. Like you look at your phone and somebody's calling, you've already, before you even see the name, you know who it is. And that's because chemical messaging can't really explain this. I love this because I'm a biochemist, and that's what we study is all the chemical messages. So this is a protein in our body. So the proteins are the workers in our body. They're absolutely important, but proteins fold into these beautiful patterns that are vibrations. Your DNA, I'm pretty sure you've all seen a picture of DNA. DNA is a vibration. If you've never thought about it that way, realize that is what it is. We actually have more DNA than any species, but 98% of our DNA, they don't know what it does, which is also makes us totally different. But proteins change based on the vibes. And most of the vibes you're sending to yourself are your own thoughts. So vibration of love versus a vibration of fear. And so they actually are now doing stuff with some kind of fancy microscopes where they can actually see the changes in the vibration of the proteins. This is actually Tai Chi. So Tai Chi, Qigong, true yoga, not gymnastics yoga. Look at me getting your ego involved. I do Tai Chi. I had to do the beginner one. I've done Qigong for 25 years, and so I went to a beginner Tai Chi. And I had to do it like 3 or 4 times before I could finally move on to the next class. And I tell people that because it's got so many moves and stuff. And I would just think it was the funnest thing because I would just mess up. Everybody'd be over there and I'd be over here. And I'm like, how did I miss that turn? And I would just be giggling. I would leave there. Anyway, so now I'm in this class that is called advanced because there's only beginner advanced. And so it's basically we all know the moves. And so it's just 3 ladies and our teacher. And her husband, who is just like a total goofball. Whenever at each of the ends, you end like this, and he always goes, Batman, like under his breath. And whenever there's men in the room, it drives him crazy because he's like beyond ADHD. And he's like, he has to make noises as he's moving. I find them hysterical. I guess you could find them annoying. Anyway, I leave there and my hands are like on fire. I feel like I'm Jesus hands, like I'm healed. Anybody I touch right now. And so we kind of joke about it, that you do because you're getting the energy in your body moving. And so that's the Tai Chi symbol. And so, right, it's our vital force. It is love. It's vibration that keep us. It's the breath of God, the Holy Spirit, however you want to think of it. And so the hugs, now that we've moved out of COVID, because apparently next month you're not even going to have to mask at hospitals unless you're in like surgery and stuff. So I saw that article, and then I go on the Mount Hood webpage, and it's like you have to fill out a COVID questionnaire. And so I was wondering if we're going to get rid of that next term. All right. The wrong signal, we've talked about this enough, that the word is please, so the lack of food is the wrong signal, and that can come from trauma. And that is probably one of the most traumatic things that we can do for nutrition class. This isn't even real cheese. It is called cheese because it's 51% dairy products. So American cheese is the perfect melt. And that's where the other 49% is pure crap and stuff. But that's why they can call it cheese. What were we talking about? There's something they can't actually say that word anymore. Oh, it was peanut butter that I think Aiden talked about. Anyways, this is pretty traumatic. There's a pickle on there, and then there's bacon. So toxins from our food are going to be signals that are not going to be giving us the right, the same signal as love. And we have to remember about your thoughts and emotions are actually the big ones, because we do have toxic thoughts to ourselves. We have to learn how to send ourselves kind words, and that's where learning an affirmation or a prayer, whichever your preference is, and it's just like a word or 2 or 5 that you repeat when you need to, and it's actually quite fun. So this is a guy who was Japanese in Japan, and he would take water and they would crystallize it and look at it under like the special microscope, and they would, it's beautiful, they're all different patterns. I have a bigger picture in a different slideshow. And they would say a word to the water before they would freeze it. And they would get, if they said words like love or joy in any language, if they played like Beethoven's, they would get these beautiful crystals. They could take contaminated water and have monks chant over it and be able to make beautiful crystals and stuff. But then if they even just take the word fear on the water, the crystals will come out all messed up. So think about that, because you're 80% water. And your thoughts are 99%, 99.99% of the communication going on is your own thoughts. Of sending yourself love, of finding the beauty, of taking that moment. Nobody has to see you do it. We used to in the old days. You know, just taking that moment, and even if it's out there, first 5 bites, you're like, just saying thank you to the farmer who grew the food. Or remembering to say thank you to whoever the cook in the house is. So telomeres, it occurred to me, as actually somebody who worked with Jean, that since we're talking about longevity, so I don't know, has anybody heard of telomeres? They're the telomeres is how some people say it. So telomeres are the end, this is our DNA, this is the chromosome. So the end, this would be the groovy green, and are these repeating. So only 2% of our human DNA is very different from any other species. Only 2% of our DNA actually codes for protein. Nothing else is like that. But we have these long repetitive ends that don't code. And this theory was in the 60s. They said every time your DNA replicates, you lose a little bit. That's every time the cell divides. And so eventually, they did a calculation. They said you can only live to be 80. So this is where the 80-year-old lifespan comes from. Somebody doing this random calculation back in the 60s when she discovered telomeres. She actually had it wrong. It turns out, as they said, you can't make them, you can't regrow them. Like it's a shoelace. When you lose that end of the shoelace, you can no longer, the shoelace like frazzles, comes apart, and everything's dead. So they said we're pre-programmed. If your family lives long, you have long telomeres. Hey, I'm blessed with long telomeres. And basically, as the telomeres get shorter and shorter, the cell's dead, can't divide anymore, and you die. And it's quite the myth. So here she is, the beautiful young gal with the long telomeres, and grandma doesn't have long telomeres anymore and she ages. But she, grandma has these really cool things. And so DNA again is a symphony that is playing to you. There is actually a code that is harmonic in the ACGT. So we actually, with supercomputers now, we actually do these tests. So this was done in China at this hospital. They put people on 4 different diets. And so one is what I gave them some of them names. I call it the gorilla diet. And so it's whole food plant-based. And so actually, Joe Furman, who you guys are listening to this week, he lives actually like less than an hour from my parents, and they actually saw him give a talk in a local library like 30, 25 years ago. And he said we should be eating like gorillas, which is whole food plant-based, like we should be eating a salad every day and stuff. The second one was, they actually called it the macho diet, which was eating like an American, pretty much eating like fast food. The third diet was the Asian American diet, which has become extremely unhealthy, which is just coated with oil and sugar. I should have included, I don't know what happened to Asian restaurants, but they in the past 20 years are just like pure oil. And then number 4, this is the one, is the high energy density diet, which is the highly processed carbohydrate and meat diet. And what they looked at was the length of the telomeres of the people on these diets. And anybody want to guess who had the longest telomeres? Well, of course, the ones who are eating whole food, plant-based. Because it turns out you can make your telomeres longer. So your telomeres, I don't know how they figure this out, but they decrease by about 15 base pairs every year, unless you're eating healthy. But it turns out bigger change than the diet was being playful, having good sleep, gratitude, laughter. This is apparently not doctored up picture. That this is a really famous picture, and being of service, like enjoying that service, whatever it is. And the biggest change of all, to the telomeres. And so ponder this. What happens? The word retirement is a terrible word. People retire and then they do nothing. They're no longer of service. Other people retire and they get really involved in stuff. So you don't ever want to retire. You want to move on to the next step in that. So that's Joey when he was little, being of service, Mahatma Gandhi. And that's actually why I gave up animal products. But this was a study that was done in the US and in China, and they took a bunch of people who were depressed and they said for 3 months, do what makes you feel good. And after 3 months, folks in China were all better. No one's in the US were not. They give them drugs or anything, they took these people, and so the question is why, and it has to do with what they did. The people in the US did what made them feel better. They went shopping, they exercised, they did self-help. It's all about me, and they didn't feel any better. And the people in China, they all went and were of service. This is bizarre because it's China. I've been to China. It's like, wow, they did stuff to make other people feel good. So anyway, just ponder that. And remembering the importance of gratitude. So being of service can just be saying thank you to people. Let's see where this goes. Yeah, and different ways you practice gratitude. So again, you guys have your G-bombs due today. Yeah, and the birds are back because spring is like 2 weeks away. And so you hear the birds, and so noticing that, taking a longer way to walk, the sun is out for like an hour. We'll talk about NMN next class. So, fountain views. All right, I'm gonna stop. The end of my recording.